Sarah's going to introduce the second major artist of the Mexican muralist movement.
A movement that began in early 1920s in Mexico, in which the government commissioned arts to make art that would educate the illiterate population about history
and present a vision of Mexico's future. Hello, Sarah. Before you get started, what did you think of the Day of the Dead presentation?
I loved it. I would love to be in Mexico walking down the parade. That looks like such a blast and such a great cultural activity. So yes, today our artist, let me share my screen. Our artist is David Alfaro Siqueiros. And he was a Mexican social realist painter. Excuse me. There we go. Born in 1896, best known for his large public murals using the latest in equipment, materials, and techniques. Along with Diego Rivera and Jose Clemente Orozco, he was one of the most famous of the Mexican muralists. Mexican muralism refers to an art project funded by the Mexican government in an attempt to reunify the country under the government post-Mexican Revolution. So the project was to allow artists to promote political ideas regarding the social revolution that had just recently ended, so that viewers of the art may reflect on how pivotal the revolution was in Mexican history. So we covered Diego Rivera in Art Talk 49, and you can see him right here in some of these pictures. Here's Frida Kahlo, who we covered in Art Talk 11. We haven't covered Jose Clemente Orozco, but he was another Mexican muralist famous for his murals in the Dartmouth Library. So in 1911, at age 15, Siqueiros was involved in a student strike at the Academy of San Carlos of the National Academy of Fine Arts. They protested the school's teaching methodology and urged the impeachment of the school's directors. Now, their protests eventually led to the establishment of an open-air academy in Santa Anita. He was a member of the Mexican Communist Party and believed that art and politics were inextricably combined. So here's the Lord of Poison. And the story behind the Lord of Poison has several versions, but all of them involve a priest in Mexico who would kiss the Corpus Christi, or body of Christ, but his feet were poisoned by someone to try and assassinate this priest. So the legend is that the feet of the statue moved inward to keep the priest from kissing the statue. And in another version, the icon itself absorbed the poison, thus turning the statue black. In this case, obviously, it's a sketch, a painting, not the statue, but it's representing that story. Siqueiros spent time studying in Europe, particularly France, Italy, and Spain, beginning in 1919, so right in the wake of World War I. And fascism was created and born out of a response to World War I and the socio-cultural political changes that ensued. This piece most notably shows a woman giving birth to a figure on a raft. It's not quite detailed, so it's up for interpretation. The seas around her are tumultuous, and the sky above her is swirling and gray. In 1936, the world, particularly Europe, was a pressure cooker of anger and fear leading up to the start of World War II. And this piece portrays the chaos that fascism was born out of. Ilya Ratner describes ethnography best. He says, in ethnography, the sadness of the colors and wintry background give a sense of melancholy. Siqueiros chooses to put a mysterious mask on a dark-skinned person wearing traditional white clothes. The person is also wearing a sombrero, a symbol of the Mexican nation. Since the piece's name is ethnography, the assumption is that it's how the Western world sees the indigenous, the other. They see them as a sad people, a person without personality, just a mask with no facial expression. And although the person is wearing festive clothes, the mask's facial expression is revealing that it is not at all a celebration. So this piece, despite being finished by Joseph Renaud after Siqueiros' arrest for the attempted murder of Leon Trotsky, Portrait of the Bourgeoisie still retains its originator's focus as a commentary on the dangers of the intersections among government, capitalism, and industry. Best understood as a triptych, the three walls that make up the mural feature a historical panorama meant to portray these interweaving vignettes of the burning remains of the past order pre-Mexican Revolution, persisting present social inequities, and frightening futuristic visions should technology and nature merge. Portrait of the Bourgeoisie is considered Siqueiros' most successful work, even more so because it was created during a time when the Mexican government attempted to restrict artists' self-expression and erase its oppressive history. This large fresco, located in a relatively small library, spans 2 facing walls and the ceiling. So it kind of creates this vault-like shape that dwarfs the viewer with its impressive, larger-than-life figures. So the south wall, which is shown here, depicts the Chilean indigenous peoples in their struggle for freedom and independence from the European conquistadors. The north wall of this mural echoes this with representations of indigenous Mexicans. In the center appear historic fighters, most notably the 16th century Mapuche warrior Galvarino, who raises his maimed hands. And attached to his body is the head of 19th century Chilean philosopher Francisco Bilbao. So combined, this joint figure kind of symbolizes the need for both physical and mental force in combat. And this piece is aptly located at the Escuela Mexico in Chile. El Derecho a la Cultura, or Rectoría a la Cultura, is a 3D mural on the side of a building at the Universidad Autónoma de Mexico, which is actually the oldest university in the Americas, dating back to 1551. As with many of his other works, this mural has a political commentary. The socio-political commentary of this piece is that the working class is essential to the formation of Mexican society. The middle class is represented by the university and the student, and the working class is represented by the worker. So the student, which is this front figure, upon finishing his studies, presents his knowledge in the form of a book given to society. But the interesting part about this work, according to the artist, is that the book is based on the experiences of the worker and not of the student himself, rather what the student studied. So it's quite philosophical. But it also shows the importance of the worker as well as the knowledge. The Polyforum Cultural Siqueiros is a cultural, political, and social facility located in Mexico City as part of the World Trade Center complex in Mexico City. It was designed and decorated by Siqueiros in the 1960s and holds the largest mural work in the world called La Marcha de la Humanidad. The building has a theater, galleries, and more, but the main focus is the Forum Universal, which you can see on the left, which contains the interior portion of Siqueiros' mural work. And visitors can experience the mural while standing on a rotating stage, listening to him narrate about his mural. Here's a self-portrait that he did. Siqueiros believed that art should be public, educational, and ideological. He painted mostly murals, as we've seen, and other portraits of the revolution, its goals, its past, and the current oppression of the working classes. And the notion of this controlled accident of his style of painting, as adopted by him, actually influenced Jackson Pollock, who attended one of his experimental workshops in New York. And so it was kind of this combination of surrealism and psychoanalysis that made Siqueiros unique. And finally, here is a photo of AJ in front of one of Siqueiros' murals. And again, it's highlighting the people of Mexico rising up and taking action for equality and for justice. The translation of the mural reads, "May everyone who complains with righteousness have a court of justice who will hear, guard, and defend them against the strong and the arbitrary." That concludes this week's Art Talk. I hope you enjoyed delving into the mind and spirit of Siqueiros today, and I will see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. What interesting art. In 1917, Mexico established its present-day constitution.
Yes, Nicole, we need to keep the art in context of the 1920s and 30s, a time often called the defining era of modern Mexican history.
History and art go hand in hand.